Hello, welcome to the Empowered Marriage Podcast. My name is Helen Harrison from Power of Change Counselling and Coaching. I'm a relationship and personal growth specialist. The Empowered Marriage Podcast is all about conversations around relationships, love and marriage. And I talk into what an empowered marriage is all about. And so would you say it's about being able to build a relationship that just fills your soul? You're able to connect, you're able to talk, you have different adventures, whether it's raising children or going off on a literal adventure. You have some joint values, some not joint values. Also, being able to communicate to understand, being able to communicate with confidence, being able to communicate where you can get to a place where you may agree to disagree, but you've both got your own perspective and you can get to that place. And so the last part, I think, of a relationship and empowered marriage is fulfillment, to be able to feel fulfilled. And fulfillment, again, looks really different for everybody, doesn't it? But what fulfillment is for you in a relationship. So that's what this empowered marriage is about. So today I'm talking about, do you stay or do you go? Because this is something I see a lot, Can your relationship be saved? If you are sitting in, do I stay or do I go? I'm talking into this because it is a very common question. It is something that I see a lot after 18 years of working with couples. This is something I see a lot. And also due to my own lived experience, I was in a 30-year marriage and relationship, and I sat in this space quite a bit. Do I stay or do I go? And it was a quandary. And it was very, very painful. And would you agree, if your relationship isn't right, it actually blends through into absolutely everything, into your work. You find it difficult to concentrate. You're perhaps not as motivated. You haven't got as much energy. Look at the area of health. I bet you're de-energized. Perhaps you're not going to the gym as much. Perhaps you're not eating as well. Perhaps you're touching on your vices. Perhaps socially you've withdrawn or pulled away from friends and family because your relationship isn't right. So much affects you when your relationship isn't fulfilling and when you're not in a good place and when you're sitting in, do I stay or do I go? So the first place I want to talk about or talk into is, why do we stay stuck? Do I stay or do I go? And you just stay. People aren't always choosing to stay. They're actually sometimes unable to decide. So, it could be you've got children, you're raising a family, you've got a mortgage. There's a lot of fear associated with being out there on your own. You're choosing to stay because you sort of get on. There's sometimes that are good. Staying stuck, you get caught in your head and you're just looping and you go round and round. You may stay stuck because your parents broke up and they're like hell you're going to break up. You've got a vision of how you want this family to be, and that is how it's going to be. So people stay stuck for so many reasons. I've really noticed it, I reckon, in the last couple of years. People are staying in relationships where perhaps they may not have previously, and I think a lot of that is due to the cost of living. The cost of living, and where perhaps previously somebody might go into a rental to just have a little bit of a break, to reassess, see if they can reconnect. People can't afford to do that these days, and so people are just staying stuck. So that, I think, is a big thing in itself. Where I want to go to next is, every relationship follows a cycle. every relationship. Now, the cycle is connection, disconnection, and repair. And you may go through that cycle 5 times at a dinner party, or you might go through that once in 2 weeks, or for some people, you might go through it once over a month. Now, the disconnect is the place that you do not want to stay for too long, because that's really, really unhealthy. The idea is if there is a disconnect, that you can quite quickly repair. So examples of repair in a relationship, actually, let's take it back a step. So when you're in disconnect, sometimes if you've got a level of trauma, you might get quite triggered and stay there for a while. If any of you have read or listened to my book Inner Wealth, you will know that I talk about when my trigger was triggered in my marriage. I'd stay in it for far too long. I didn't have the skills. I didn't reach out to find support, and I used to call it my comfy couch, and I could stay in there for days, if not up to a week. That is very, very damaging in a relationship because you're in that disconnect for such a long amount of time. But that was the trauma. Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the pain body, those tentacles of pain. And it did feel like that. It felt like I was in mud, and I was sort of being pulled into it, and I did not know how to get out of it. And so I stayed in disconnect for a long time, which creates a lot of havoc. So when you're in disconnect, there's a couple of parts to it. If you are in your trauma and you are triggered, it's learning how to attend to yourself. That's a conversation for another day. It's learning and recognizing, okay, I am in my adapted child. The adapted child is the part of you that you created when you were little. So, you may have been with abusive parents. You learn to shut down. You learn to be quiet. Very clever adaptation. You did that to keep yourself safe. However, now, in your present-day relationship, that is not helpful. So what's happening now is when you get triggered, you go into that adapted child. That is your responsibility to attend to your younger you. Again, conversation for another day, but it's learning how to do that. What I'm talking about is now you, the relationship. So there really is 3 entities in your relationship. There's you, your partner, and your relationship. So a healthy relationship, when they're doing repair, examples of repair could be something like, I know I hurt you. Or it could be, hey, I really want to understand. Can you explain it to me, please? Or it can be, can we try that again? Now, have you noticed my tone? It's not coming from my head. I'm in my body. I really want to understand. That's repair. It is like a bid for connection, but it is further. It's softness. It's kindness. It's validation. You cannot go into repair while you are still in your adaptive child. Now, what sort of child are you? Do you withdraw? I just tapped on it earlier, but it's recognizing what you do. Are you someone who argues? Are you someone who's got to be right? Are you someone who just walls up and disappears? Are you somebody who just pursues? Know what your adaptation is. That is extremely important, so that you can come back to repair. The Gottmans, I follow them, Google them. They do great work, and I use that also. Gottmans is all about, it's about turning towards, making bids for connection. It's turning towards instead of away. So, because you'll still stay in the disconnect. I want you to really realize that the conflict isn't the problem. You're always going to have conflict. And for any couples who say that they don't, that actually is unhealthy. It is important that you have conflict. What the issue is the absence of repair, and having the skill set and the know how to repair. So I want to talk into ambiguity. Now, ambiguity, I know my pronunciation isn't perhaps for you to understand. Google it. Ambiguity is when repair disappears. There's no repair going on. So you're sitting in often a place of disconnect for a fair bit of the time. It's when you stop believing that the relationship can change, and this is where you sit in, should I stay or should I go? And you're caught in two decisions. You're physically there, but your mind is elsewhere, and also your emotions. You're uncertain, and like I said earlier, why some people, they stay stuck because ambiguity is here, and I was in this, so I know it, and I know it really well. For me, I'm here for the kids, and that was a really big driver for me, because I'd created this family. Being adopted, I'd created my own family that was biologically connected to me. It was my first family, and so it was a really massive decision to make a step. Do I stay or do I go? And so that's why I stayed in that. But you might have in your head, I'm just not sure if I'm with the right person. You could be playing that around. A big one is, I'm waiting. Things will change. It's not always going to be like this. I'll just wait a little bit longer. So that's limbo. You're in limbo. It's you're not actually fully choosing the relationship. You are hoping that things will be different. For a relationship to go into repair, you've both got to be on board. It's almost like you have one foot out the door. No one is fully leaving. And I will bring this into a session with a couple if I feel that one person is not wanting to do repair. Because for me, I'm either there to help you repair or exit, and how you can do that amicably. And when you're sitting in the staying or going or not knowing, we're not repairing anything, are we? So we can't come back into connection and all the feelings that come when you feel connected with your partner. So if you're in limbo land, and now I'm talking to those of you who've been in limbo for a long time, because it is painful. It's inaction. You're sitting on the fence. You're not actually doing anything. And so this comes back to what I've been talking into. Do I stay or do I go? A point I would say is really get to know who you are. Do I like the version of who I am in this relationship? And if you don't, start there while you're still in the relationship. So really get to know yourself. Purpose, vision, mission, what lights you up. Do you know your values? If we talk into what values are, values have been crucial for me. If I take a step back, when you live a life without values, you don't know where the boat's taking you. It's where are you steering? Where are you going? For a lot of us, when you're younger, you look at outside of yourself for instructions of how to do life, because that's what you do. And you then continue the pattern of looking outside of yourself. But then you start to feel discomfort, uncomfortable. You start asking yourself questions like, who am I? Where do I belong? What gets me excited to get up in the morning? it's really knowing what your values are. And you do that by, doing a values assessment with me, but you do that by asking yourself the quality questions. If you have a look at what you do in a typical day, what are you doing? Is it family? Are you learning? Are you growing? Is it around health? Is it creating something with your hands? You are your happiest version when you are living a life that is aligned to your values. So trying to work out, do I stay or do I go? And can your relationship be saved? It is really helpful to work yourself out first. Because if you're sitting in ambiguity, do I stay or do I go? It almost feels like you're out in the ocean, there's no land in sight, you don't know where to grab onto. So by really understanding yourself and who am I, what do I value, what is an ideal day for me? That's a great question. And then from there you can do an ideal week, an ideal weekend, and because it's creating your ideal life. I believe 99% of the inner issues that we have is because we don't know what we want. When you can start working out what you want, then you can start doing action steps in accordance to what you want, and you can start setting goals. But when you don't know what you want, like, I don't know if I want this relationship, this is where it gets really difficult. Also, coming back to do I stay or do I go, and ambiguity, sometimes you can stay in a relationship because you have fear of being out on your own. You have fear of what that's going to feel like. So with that uncomfortableness, that fear is so strong, so you stay in the limbo. You're not wanting to repair it or work on it, but you have fear of going out on your own. So it's a bit of a quandary, isn't it? So the more of your own inner work that you can really start asking yourself the questions, and where does this fear come from of being on your own? Is there a fear of abandonment, of rejection, of doing it on your own, of a deep loneliness? When we feel lonely, even when we're in a room full of people, that's a disconnect with yourself. The most richest relationship is the one with yourself. So it's not so simple, do I stay or do I go? It really is getting in and under the deeper fear of what is keeping me stuck. Because when you're in limbo, there's no action, is there? And if you aren't able to get into repair for a relationship looks like being able to have dialogue, being able to be vulnerable, being able to be really honest and truthful. And if you have a backlog of weeks, months, or even years, you're not being truthful. You're not being truthful with yourself, but you're also not being truthful with your partner. So this is why relationship skills are vital. If you are in a relationship, you need to learn relationship skills of what to do when there is conflict. For many years, if you've been coming to see me, I do express that the quality of your relationship is how you do conflict, and being able to resolve conflict and come back into connection. It is a lifelong journey. It's not something that I've got it. Yes, your skills will build, but then you just keep adding to them and adding to them. So I hope that's helped you. If you're listening to this or you're watching me on video, and do I stay or do I go? You don't have to decide, but it is really questioning, okay, what's the fear under all of it? Is there a fear of going back into the relationship, going back into connection again, to be hurt again? But if you can learn relationship skills and you can speak into that and speak up and be honest and have integrity and not take anything underground and be really truthful, and if you're with a partner who's willing to hear you and listen and is also willing to repair, I believe you can create a beautiful, fulfilling relationship. Again, it's a dance. Connection, disconnection, repair. And sometimes the disconnection can be pretty heave-ho, pretty harrowing. However, repair can be even deeper, because when it's a deep disconnect, it's also a deep repair. And that's where you feel the intimacy and the connection and the closeness. And who isn't looking for that? I'd have to say most people are looking for that. And to be able to have that, you've got to be able to do that yourself. So if you're feeling stuck, do I stay or do I go? I'd encourage a relationship assessment with me. You can go online, powerofchange.com.au, book yourself in, and we can do a relationship assessment to get really clear of where you are in your relationship, but also all the 7 areas of life, spirituality, vocational, mental, family, physical. I'm sure I've missed something. You're getting the gist, because if your relationship isn't right and you're in limbo, do I stay or do I go? It affects every other area of your relationship. So really important, and it's big decisions. Do I stay or do I go? In fact, it's one of your life's biggest decisions. So I think it's important to not sit in limbo and do something about it. So check my website out. Anyway, thanks for listening to the Empowered Marriage podcast. I bring these in every single week on a topic. If you've enjoyed this, I'd love you to subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone else who could benefit, make comments. Love to hear from you. But anyway, until next time, remember, it's all about, I'm trying to think of my tagline. Sorry, I've got a new tagline. Let me share. My tagline for 18 years has been, the power of change is within you. And I love that. And it is very close to me. But my new tagline is helping relationships thrive, one couple at a time. So until next time, you go out there and love living in your life. See ya.